The capture of Jefferson Hope concluded smoothly after his initial struggle. Once restrained, Hope adopted a polite and cooperative attitude, expressing concern for his captor's well-being and hoping no one had been harmed during the skirmish. He suggested being taken to the police station in his own cab, requesting the removal of the restraints around his legs so that he could walk. Sherlock Holmes agreed, trusting Hope's word. As Hope stood, his impressive physicality and determined demeanor became apparent. He praised Holmes for his skillful pursuit, describing it as exceptional and jokingly suggesting Holmes would make an excellent high-ranking police officer. Holmes, joined by Watson, Gregson and Lestrade, accompanied Hope to the police station. Hope entered the cab willingly, showing no inclination to flee, and they arrived swiftly at their destination. At the station, the inspector, a cool and methodical individual, recorded Hope's name along with the murders he was charged with committing. The inspector informed Hope of his forthcoming appearance before the magistrates and advised him that any statements he made could be used against him. Hope, undeterred, expressed his wish to recount his story, explaining that he might not live long enough to face trial. He clarified that this was not an indication of suicidal intent, but rather a result of his pressing medical condition. Addressing Watson directly, Hope confirmed him to be a doctor and invited him to examine his chest. Upon doing so, Watson diagnosed an aortic aneurysm, remarking on the unusual vibrations and internal noises emanating from Hope's chest. Hope explained that the condition had developed over years of hardship and exposure in the Salt Lake Mountains, progressively worsening and now nearing a critical rupture. Despite the gravity of his condition, Hope remained unperturbed by the prospect of death. However, he expressed a strong desire to leave behind an honest account of his actions, emphasizing that he did not want to be remembered as a mere murderer. After a brief consultation among the inspector, Holmes and Watson, it was decided that Hope's statement would be taken immediately, given the precariousness of his health. Hope, visibly weary, seated himself and began recounting his tale in a calm, deliberate manner. He revealed that his actions were driven by a profound personal vendetta against two men he held accountable for the deaths of a father and daughter. Unable to achieve justice through legal avenues due to the passage of time, Hope took it upon himself to act as judge, jury, and executioner. He argued that anyone with a sense of justice in his position would have done the same. Finally, he disclosed that the daughter he sought to avenge had been engaged to marry him 2 decades earlier, but had been forced into marrying Drebber, one of the men he ultimately pursued. The narrator recounts his relentless pursuit of 2 men, Drebber and Stangerson, driven by a deep desire for vengeance following the death of a loved one. After taking the wedding ring from her finger, he vows that Drebber will face justice and die burdened with the memory of his guilt. The ring becomes a powerful symbol of his mission as he follows the men across continents, undeterred by the challenges of poverty and hardship. Despite their wealth, the narrator's determination remains unwavering, fully accepting that his quest may cost him his life. When he arrives in London with little money, the narrator takes a job as a cab driver to support himself, while continuing his search. Although the city's tangled streets initially seem overwhelming, he quickly adapts by using a map and memorizing key landmarks, like stations and hotels. His persistence pays off when he discovers that the 2 men are staying in a boarding house in Camberwell, on the other side of the river. To avoid recognition, he grows a beard and begins silently watching their movements. However, their cautious behavior, rarely going out alone or at night, makes it difficult for him to find an opportunity to act. For 2 weeks, the narrator trails the men tirelessly, either on foot or by cab, as he waits for the perfect moment to strike. Drebber's frequent drunkenness contrasts with Stangerson's ever-watchful demeanor, making his task even more difficult. His obsessive focus on the pursuit begins to take a toll, causing him to fall behind on his cab earnings. Yet financial struggles fail to shake his resolve. He is sustained by his vow and a sense that his moment of retribution is near. Even his worsening health, particularly a chest condition that threatens to end his mission prematurely, cannot deter him from his purpose. The breakthrough comes one evening while the narrator is driving along Torquay Terrace, near the boarding house. He notices a cab pulling up to the residence and sees Drebber and Stangerson emerge with their luggage. Suspecting they might be preparing to leave the city, he follows them to Euston Station. There, he listens in as they inquire about a train to Liverpool, only to be told that the next one will not depart for several hours. The delay causes a disagreement between the two men. Drebber insists on leaving briefly to attend to personal business, dismissing Stangerson's objections with anger, and a reminder that Stangerson is merely a paid servant. Drebber promises to return by 11 or meet later at Halliday's private hotel before walking away alone. The narrator recognizes this as the moment he has been waiting for. With the two men now separated, Drebber is left unprotected, providing the narrator with the perfect opportunity to act. However, he does not rush into action. His plan is deliberate and carefully crafted to ensure that Drebber will fully understand who is behind the act of vengeance and why it is happening. By a stroke of luck, a few days earlier, a gentleman inspecting houses along Brixton Road had dropped a key in the narrator's cab, though it was later claimed. The narrator explains that this key will play a critical role in the execution of his plan, as he prepares to bring his long-standing mission to its ultimate conclusion. The narrator recounts the deliberate steps he took to confront Drebber, beginning with his preparation of a secluded house by creating a duplicate key, ensuring access to a private space free from interruption. The challenge lay in luring Drebber to this location. Tracking Drebber's movements, the narrator observed him frequent several liquor shops, becoming progressively drunk. Eventually, Drebber hailed a hansom cab, and the narrator followed closely, shadowing him across Waterloo Bridge and through the city. To his surprise, Drebber returned to his boarding house, prompting the narrator to discreetly park his own cab nearby and wait. A short while later, a commotion erupted from the boarding house as the door flew open. Drebber stumbled out, forcibly ejected by a furious young man unknown to the narrator. The man accused Drebber of insulting an honorable woman, punctuating his anger with a shove and a kick that sent Drebber sprawling into the street. Humiliated, Drebber fled down the road until he spotted the narrator's cab. Without hesitation, he climbed in and instructed the narrator to drive him to Halliday's private hotel. Suppressing his excitement over this unexpected turn of events, the narrator began driving while considering his next move. For a moment he contemplated taking Drebber to a remote countryside location for an isolated confrontation. However, Drebber's drinking habit derailed this plan when he instructed the narrator to stop outside a gin palace. Drebber entered, leaving the narrator to wait. Hours later, as the gin palace closed, Drebber emerged so intoxicated that the narrator felt assured his plan could proceed without resistance. The narrator then explains his intentions, emphasizing that he did not wish to kill Drebber in cold blood. Instead, he resolved to offer Drebber a chance at survival through a game of chance. Recalling his past, the narrator shares that he once worked as a janitor at York College, where he attended a lecture on poisons. During this lecture, he learned about a potent alkaloid derived from South American arrow poison, a substance so lethal that even the smallest dose could cause instant death. Secretly acquiring a small amount, he crafted two types of pills, one harmless and the other laced with poison. His plan was to present Drebber with a choice between the pills, leaving the outcome to fate rather than an act of deliberate murder. As the narrative shifts to the night of the confrontation, the weather is described as stormy, with heavy rain and strong winds. The narrator, however, feels exhilarated and purposeful, sensing that he's on the verge of achieving a long-sought goal. Memories of John Ferrier and Lucy, two figures from his past, vividly appear in his thoughts, strengthening his resolve. Upon arriving at the house on Brixton Road, the surroundings are silent except for the sound of falling rain. Gazing through the window, the narrator notices Drebber slumped over in a drunken sleep. Waking him, the narrator informs Drebber that it is time to leave the cab. Mistaking the location for the hotel he had requested, Drebber complies without question and follows the narrator into the garden of the secluded house. This recounting highlights the narrator's meticulous planning and his determination to address a deeply personal grievance. The poisoned pills symbolize his intent to administer a form of justice that relies on chance rather than outright violence. The stormy night, and the narrator's recollections of his past, add emotional weight to the narrative, underscoring the significance of the confrontation and the gravity of his action. The narrator recounts his pivotal confrontation with Enoch Drebber, a man he has relentlessly pursued to exact vengeance for the suffering inflicted upon Lucy Ferrier. Guiding a drunken Drebber into a room, the narrator lights a candle, revealing his face. The sight fills Drebber with immediate and palpable terror. He trembles and recoils as the narrator, consumed by grief and fury, accuses him of shattering Lucy's life. He blames Drebber for her heartbreak following her forced abduction and the murder of her father, declaring that the long-awaited moment of justice has come, and one of them will not see the next sunrise. The narrator produces a box containing 2 pills, explaining that one is poisoned while the other is harmless. He commands Drebber to choose one, leaving the other for himself, thus placing their fates in the hands of chance or divine judgment. Drebber, petrified and begging for his life, eventually complies under the threat of a knife. After swallowing his chosen pill, the poison swiftly takes hold, and Drebber collapses in agony, dying moments later. The narrator confirms his death, and seized by a sudden dark impulse, uses his own blood to write Raisha on the wall. This act is intended to mislead the police into suspecting a larger plot or conspiracy. With his mission accomplished, the narrator leaves the scene and returns to his cab. Later, the narrator discovers that Lucy's ring, a cherished memento, has gone missing from his pocket. Determined to retrieve it, he takes the risk of returning to the house. There, he encounters a police officer but cleverly avoids arousing suspicion by pretending to be hopelessly drunk. Successfully evading detection, he departs the scene. With Drebber dead, the narrator now turns his focus to his second target, Stangerson, who has remained wary and secluded in a hotel. Resolute and undeterred, the narrator begins formulating his next steps to complete his quest for retribution. At dawn, Jefferson Hope entered the room of his target to exact justice for a murder committed in the past. He recounted the details of Drebber's death and presented his victim with the same grim choice of 2 pills, one poisoned and the other harmless. Instead of seizing the chance to save himself, the man attacked Hope, lunging at his throat. Forced to defend himself, Hope fatally stabbed the man in the heart. He remained certain that divine will would have ensured the man selected the poisoned pill had the confrontation gone differently. Following this act, Hope returned to his work as a cab driver, planning to continue until he had saved enough money to return to America. However, his plans unraveled when a boy approached him one day, claiming that a gentleman at 221B Baker Street required a cab. Unsuspecting, Hope complied, only to discover it was a trap. Upon his arrival, Sherlock Holmes swiftly arrested him, securing handcuffs on him with precision. Hope concluded his story by asserting that his actions were as much a form of justice as those of the officers who now detained him. The weight of Hope's tale cast a hush over the room, even capturing the attention of the seasoned detectives present too. Lestrade, diligently recording the account in shorthand, broke the silence with the scratching of his pencil. Holmes, ever inquisitive, posed a final question, asking about Hope's accomplice, the person who had responded to Holmes's planted advertisement for the ring. Hope refused to divulge his partner's identity, revealing only that his friend had volunteered and carried out the task with skill. Holmes acknowledged the accomplice's cleverness, while the inspector reminded everyone of the legal steps to follow. He announced that Hope would appear before a magistrate on Thursday, requiring the attendance of all involved. With this, Jefferson Hope was led away by warders, and Holmes and Watson departed for Baker Street, their involvement in the case momentarily concluded.